Hello friends, how are you? Welcome to my channel. So let's start the today fanfiction story. Chapter 1 Naruto Uzumaki. The location of the most secure and one of the important structures in the entire Hidden Leaf village, or any village for that matter, was in chaos. That was what the third Hokage Hiruzen Sarutobi used to describe the situation he found in his subordinates' outposts. The walls were painted with a bright pink color that could be seen even in the dark, and the floors had ball bearings that would have tripped anyone who was unaware of them. The bearings were just the beginning if one considered whatever slippery fluid had been smeared on the ground. After managing to walk around the first disaster, Hiruzen could not resist the amused smile or the annoyed twitching of his eyebrows. The locker room had the same pink color on its walls and the slippery floor with ball bearings. The lockers were unlocked, revealing the pink clothes that replaced the standard ANBU uniform. There was also a receding stench of a fart in the air. The small dining hall was an even greater disaster. Here the stench of a fart was definitely prominent. Hiruzen turned his eyes to the ceiling, where 13 groaning operatives were left suspended midair by the ninja wire whose glint his eyes could pick. There were more than 13 plates on the tables, more than twice the number of a NBU he could see present. Lord Third, a ninja groaned from the door. The old man turned to the masked ninja. "What's going on here? We were attacked. Where are the rest of the members?" Hiruzen asked, resisting the urge to light his pipe. "Some are in the toilets," the operative said, collapsing against the door. "Others are chasing the perpetrator." "What are they doing in the toilets?" "Laxatives." "Ah," the old man said. "I know I may regret asking this question, but who is the culprit?" "You should know. It's Naruto Uzumaki." A stumbling, masked man shouted in a high-pitched voice. "Get back here." Naruto ducked to evade a blunted kunai thrown his way. "You guys are too overrated." That seemed to get the ANBU guy work harder to capture him. The man was fast, there was no question about that, but since he had to deal with slippery grounds every 5 steps, he was gaining little on Naruto. Running in the manner taught in the Ninja Academy was actually awesome, Naruto realized. Leaning forward shifted his center of gravity ahead of him, using it as something to drag him forward. Placing his arms against his sides meant that he was reducing unnecessary arm movement, thus preserving energy. ANBU suddenly appeared in front of him. Naruto smirked and threw a sphere on the ground. It bounced twice before releasing a yellowish gas. In the smokescreen, Naruto jumped from the roof he was on and landed on the unusually vacant streets below. Even with the wind whistling in his ears, he could hear the man behind him screaming and coughing in outrage. Naruto would have assumed that his blonde hair and sky-blue eyes would have been enough to give away his position from the very beginning of his attack. He was wearing a bright pink outfit for heaven's sake, and no one seemed to find him. Speaking of which, the blonde discarded his pink getup once he was certain that there was not anyone in the vicinity. Replacing that was a much simpler outfit of black knee-length shorts, a white long-sleeved t-shirt, and an orange hoodie with short sleeves. His feet had the care of blue sandals. He chose to keep the mask on his face. He had more gas weapons that he could not afford to be caught in their hazardous effects. The alleyway Naruto was in led to a much busier street. He grinned and rushed towards the full streets, hearing the footsteps of approaching captors. Before he could reach the other end, another ANBU ninja appeared, blocking the exit. He reached into the pouch strapped to his waist and took out 3 pellets that he dropped into the ground. Less than a second later, the whole pathway was filled with thick smoke that Naruto used to cover his escape. He took out a kunai and directed it upwards, into the wooden planks holding the left building's roof. The ninja wire attached to the ring helped him to rise up, and he was once again running on the rooftops. Naruto immediately snickered as the ANBU Black Ops chased after him, not in their standard uniform, but in bright pink ones that took out the element of subtlety required of them. They were stumbling over the roofing tiles, holding their aching stomachs in pain. It was just priceless. A kunai landed right by his foot. The boy glanced at it, ready to laugh at the miss. He then saw the paper tied to the circular end, fluttering in the wind. The motion ceased and the paper began to produce smoke, the squiggly lines on it fading. Before Naruto could move, chains burst out from the piece of paper and wound up around him faster than he could think. His feet were tied up too tightly for him to be properly balanced to stand. Naruto fell to his side, a smile on his face when 4 masked people and an extra unmasked old man landed on the rooftop. The blonde looked up. "Guess you got me, old man." The office of the Hokage was a place Naruto had been to many times before. He could tell where everything was even while blindfolded. There was the Hokage's large table, the mark of their village inscribed on the front. As always, it was stacked up with scrolls and papers awaiting the leader's signature. The walls had pictures of the previous Hokage, each Hokage's portrait clearer than the previous ones to show the different ages during which they serve. There was a large world map by the wall to the left, white and red robes alongside the Hokage's hat on the right. Behind the Hokage's chair was a massive window overlooking the village. Naruto sat on the ground, hands bound behind his back and his legs tied by ninja wire. He could feel the quiet condemnation towards him given by those around. From the pink-clad ANBU to the 2 men standing by the Hokage's table, The two men were vastly different. The only thing that they had in common was the admonishment in their eyes. "So, Naruto," the Hokage started with a grave voice, as if he was addressing a global threat. "Care to explain yourself?" "What do you mean, old man?" Naruto asked. "There's nothing to explain. Unless you want to know the secret of getting into the Black Ops HQ undetected, which I don't think you do. You don't see the dangers of an academy student discovering and infiltrating and pranking," Naruto interrupted, shrugging at the glares that fell on his person. "The most secure location in our village." "Most secure location in the village?" Naruto asked incredulously. "If a ninja in training could find it, I'm starting to question the secrecy you talk about, old man." As the words left his mouth, the boy was tempted to stop talking by the infuriated looks on the men standing by the Hokage's desk. A blood vessel pulsed on Uruka-sensei's forehead and Mizuki's hands were curled into a tight fist. The Hokage, to his credit, managed to keep his usual expression. "Uruka," the old Hokage said in an even tone of voice, as if he was not bothered by the displeasure of his ninja. "Can you hand me Naruto's file?" Uruka-sensei was given something else to focus on other than his displeasure at Naruto's mischief. He took the file held tightly in his left hand and passed it to the Hokage. Naruto followed it with wide, unblinking eyes. "I have a file." "That's awesome." Hiruzen placed his pipe between his lips, but he left it unlit. Naruto Uzumaki, aged 9, tried an advanced learning program but failed the graduation exam. 33 confirmed pranks, 56 suspected. All that, and he's still an academy student with about 3 years left to graduation in the current program. The student in question shifted on the floor. "Actually, it's 21 confirmed pranks and 71 suspected pranks. Not bad for a kid, wouldn't you agree?" "Shut up, Naruto," Uruka-sensei finally snapped. "Those pranks are not doing any favors for your records. Why should I care?" Naruto grumbled. "No one's getting hurt, right? Try telling that to the ANBU you fed laxatives." Now that his teacher had put it that way, Naruto was starting to feel the tiniest bit sorry for his admittedly awesome prank. How he wished he had started by ordering a large bowl of pork ramen that would have served as a distraction in this moment. Chuchai frowned. What did the little rascal do this time? The scarred teacher leaned in, as if he was sharing an important secret. "This might reflect terribly on our security apparatus." But the boy painted the walls of the ANBU headquarters pink after giving the operatives laxatives. As if that wasn't enough, he replaced the standard ANBU gear with a bright pink eyesore. And there went all the very little, guilt he had started to feel. Hearing his teacher narrate what he had actually done made it seem like he had made a medical discovery, which was something hard to do considering the fact that Tsunade of the Sannin had pretty much finished all the discoveries. It was certainly better than just called it a prank. "That's awesome," Naruto exclaimed, slamming his hand on the table. He was not alone in that excitement, his voice barely managing to overlap Chuchai's. "Naruto, my boy, what you did was simply a work of art," the ramen shop owner said. "I wish I had been in on the plan. We would have made a tsunami in the sea that is history." "Don't you mean, all was good except the part that he got caught?" Ayame said, coming in through the back door. Her father gave a snort. "Well, if I had been part of the plan, we would have never been arrested." The more Naruto heard Chuchai and Ayame speak, the more he considered another prank. Chuchai had made him realize that his previous ones were more likely to annoy the authorities than get him what he needed from them. His latest work had brought a couple of facts to light. He had a file that detailed all the things he had done in the past, that as much as whoever was in charge of disciplining academy students wanted him brought before a juvenile court, they lacked any valid accusation against him. His pranks never caused physical harm. Well, more harm than necessary, which was why nothing permanent had been done to him. So, maybe if he could not only cause one big disturbance but also manage to get away with it. He smirked. The idea was already in his head. He did have a clear picture of what he wanted to do, but the idea itself was enough for the moment. Planning too far ahead without any idea of the setbacks to come was not his way. He'd rather plan as he moved forward. "As much as I'd like to indulge in your desecration fantasies, I'm starving here," Uruka said before the conversation could go any further. "Can I get 2 miso ramen?" He would have liked to continue the conversation, but Naruto's stomach growled in reminder of its emptiness. "Give me an extra large bowl of pork ramen with extra pork and keep him coming." "On it," Chuchai said as he got to work. Few minutes later, the two were digging into their meals after an almost identical itadakimasu. They took their meal in silence, none of them having anything significant to talk about, and by the end of it, Naruto had taken 2 bowls and Uruka had taken 2 too. Uruka-sensei steered Naruto towards the location of the ANBU headquarters after their meal. The cleaning supplies were already there, placed right at the doors. Unsurprisingly, there were no operatives in the premise. They must have divided their numbers into the smaller outposts around the village, Uruka explained in case it was not obvious. Naruto stared at his masterpiece, already feeling exhausted even before the work had begun. "Where do I begin?" "Start by cleaning the walls." Uruka tried to offer a suggestion, but to Naruto it came out as an order. After that, you can just clean the fallen paint with the floors. Naruto lifted the bucket of foamy water with whatever he needed to start the cleanup. I guess I'm lucky I didn't use permanent paint after all. Doesn't make work any easier, Iruka grumbled. It will take you a whole week to clean this place at the earliest. The hallway Naruto stood in was empty, but the brightly colored walls and Iruka-sensei's shadow made it feel as if it was occupied. The blonde ran his eyes from the slippery floor to the pink walls. He sighed. If this was what awaited him if he was caught in the aftermath of his upcoming masterpiece, it was better to plan on a lot of escape routes. What did you use on the floors anyway? Iruka-sensei asked. That's my secret, the student replied and began to head inwards. This might take a while, he thought. Best get started as soon as I can. It was just as Naruto had suspected and as Iruka-sensei had predicted. Naruto had spent the rest of his day doing cleanup duty, and even then, he had managed to do what was the equivalent of a seventh of the actual work. He had seen exactly how big the building had been before he started his greatest work yet. It was a fairly normal building on the northeastern outskirts of the village that had a facade of a weapons store while the actual base was buried underground. Naruto shook his head to wipe away the thought of the place. The day was just ending, the setting sun behind his back casting long shadows ahead of him. He had parted ways with his teacher a little while back. The teacher had to deal with some stuff in the academy, and Naruto dragged his feet towards the one place that had what he needed at the moment. A few more minutes of quiet walking had him sat on a stool at Ikaraku's. His seat was at the very end of the table, half hidden by the shadows cast by the light in the stall. There was only one other chair that was empty, but apparently one of the patrons currently in the place was saving it for his girlfriend. Naruto waited patiently for his bowl of miso ramen to be delivered. It soon was, not that it mattered since he had it done in less than a minute. Aim, thankfully, anticipated his ravenous appetite at that time of day and kept landing bowls after bowls of the delicacy. By the time he felt fully satisfied, Naruto was in a better mood than the one he had arrived in. He left his cache by the stack of empty vessels and left after a word of gratitude to Aim. Instead of going home as he had been wishing earlier, the blonde allowed his feet to take him towards the outskirts of the village and into the forest surrounding the village. The only thing he could see was the green leaves of the trees, and all he could hear was the faint breeze that masked the sound of running water. He walked further into the forest until the trees gave way to a clearing. It was nothing special, just an opening with green grass and 10 tree logs embedded in the ground. The farthest end of the clearing curved and was partially hidden from him. With a sigh, Naruto took off his orange hoodie and started with what had brought him to the clearing. A set of simple warm-up exercises to keep him in the perfect condition needed. That done, he began running laps around the clearing. He was not running at top speed and neither at a leisurely jog. His pace was somewhere in between. He went along the edges of the clearing, including the curve and back. 75 laps later, Naruto collapsed against one of the logs to catch his breath. It did not take long for that to happen, and when it did, he stood up, ready to continue with his training exercise. He had to become stronger. He had to be better. Above all, Naruto Uzumaki needed to be Hokage. But before that, he had his project to finish. The following day saw Naruto Uzumaki arriving in class earlier than he usually did. The class was almost empty, and those who were in were the studious students who focused on their books almost every hour of the day. He stood at the door, trying to pick out any familiar face to no avail. He could see some faces that he had seen in passing, but none that he could recall having a conversation with. Resigned to the fact, he climbed up the levels up to the highest one. The back seat was unoccupied and he chose the one at the corner. It gave him a good view of the entire classroom, and sitting there also meant that no one could get a look on him before he realized. It was about 30 minutes before the classes started. Naruto almost regretted coming in early. It gave him nothing to do except to think. He took out a book he had been carrying with him a lot lately. From the first page to the last, the book touched on almost everything a shinobi was supposed to expect and encounter within their line of work. There were a few things left out in the book, but that was what his remarkable infiltration capabilities came in. He had snuck into the most secure archives in the village library, and while in most cases he had had to beat a hasty retreat, Naruto had snuck a glance into the books. The scarce pieces of knowledge he had obtained had been used to compile his book. No one had managed to look at his book long enough to see that he had what was supposed to be classified intelligence. Naruto opened the page he fancied the most in the entire book. It had both the knowledge printed in the book and the ones he had added to it by himself. On the top of the book were the words he loved seeing. The 9. To be continued. Thanks for watching.